Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest in our series of congressional conversations. We are very excited to be joined today by Senator Rick Scott of the great state of Florida. He's been a champion for our values. He's worked very closely with our organization. Obviously, our Florida chapter is our biggest and one we're very proud of, and we've been proud to partner with Senator Scott. So, Senator, thank you so much for joining us today.
You guys do a great job. You did a great job. You're a great partner when I was governor, and you've been a great partner in my Senate, in my 4 years up here in the Senate. And so just what you guys do, and it matters. It matters if you get the message out, you have good grassroots. So thank you for what you do.
No, we appreciate that. And obviously there's been no shortage of challenges since you've come to the Senate, and particularly the last 2 years, and looking forward to diving into some of that with you. I think before we start really getting into the issues, like I said, there's been so much going on. What do you think has been the biggest challenge of the last 2 years, or the biggest concern for the American people?
I think the American people don't realize that this living outside our means at the government level, there's a day of reckoning. And this is happening at states, at counties, at cities, and clearly at your federal government. And it's happening all over the country. You know, I don't understand why we need to be running up all this debt. Somebody's going to pay for this, right? You have to, in the meantime, as government runs up debt, the taxpayers have to pay interest expense. But then on top of that, eventually the taxes are going to have to be raised to do this. So I just don't understand why the public is not more up in arms about, at the federal level now, we have $31 trillion worth of debt. Year after year, we run $1 trillion plus deficits year after year. There's not even a plan. There's no plan to fix Medicare. There's no plan to fix Social Security. They're going bankrupt. They go bankrupt. It's common knowledge that these things are not sustainable, and no one wants to do the things that are necessary to say, let's make sure these people get their benefits. We can fix these programs and make sure people get their benefits. But there's no conversation. And then there's, the other thing is, people don't realize that inflation is caused by government spending. It's real simple. Everybody wants to act like it's a Federal Reserve. No, Federal Reserve's done the wrong things. Jay Powell's misallocated capital, unbelievable misallocation of capital by building up his balance sheet. But it's government spending that's caused this inflation. So it's nothing else.
Absolutely. No, and we appreciate your courage. You mentioned Medicare, Social Security, these entitlement programs that are growing on autopilot. It obviously takes courage, and I think you've been eloquent in explaining that we can both protect people who count on these programs, but rein in, how much they're driving our debt, and that's a long-term battle. Over the last 2 years, the Biden administration has enacted almost $5 trillion worth of spending, much of it with Congress, obviously, with Democratic majorities in both chambers, but obviously some of it simply on their own, such as through the student loan bailout. That is, of course, constitutionally questionable. You mentioned that people generally have a hard time connecting the impacts of government spending. I think this year we've seen that people sort of are starting to get it a little bit, right, at the grocery store, gas station. But what do you hear when you're back in Florida from families and businesses who are dealing with these rising costs? What are you hearing about the impact that they think policy is having and how it's impacting their lives, down in Florida and around the country?
Well, this is personal because I watched it growing up. I was born to a single mom. We lived in public housing. I watched her struggle to put food on the table. There ultimately were 5 kids. She got remarried. Hard to put food on the table, gas in the car, get a job. I mean, my mom would take in multiple jobs, all sorts of odd jobs. The kids, we all started working really early to try to help, make ends meet. So this is going on across the country. I got more people in Florida going to food banks, I think, than ever has gone to food banks. I've got people taking second jobs, delaying their retirement. This is all happening because of inflation. So people are mad about it, but you don't hear them talk about, actually this is caused by the people I elected voting for wasteful spending. Just like you just said, the $5 trillion. It would be really bad if we had $5 trillion in the bank that we had saved and spent that money and wasted it, but we didn't. We borrowed all this money. I mean, we're borrowing. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Who is going to pay for all this? And think about just since Reagan left office, the unbelievable increase year after year, president after president, of just constant increase in the debt, just a constant increase in the debt. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, we can't do anything about it. And by the way, we don't vote on Medicare. We don't vote on, on any of these safety net programs. We don't vote on Social Security. They're just automatic pilot now. Obamacare is automatic pilot. And so what that means is we don't have to take any votes up here because God forbid we do that. But what I don't get is why shouldn't Congress, it's part of I put out a plan, rescueamerica.com. I said, Congress ought to tell you every year what they're going to do to fix Social Security, Medicare, because guess what? You paid into Social Security, Medicare. You should get your benefits. And those programs can be fixed, but you can't fix it if we don't live within our means. You can't fix it if we don't improve our economy.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, one of the problems that you brought up is, Congress hasn't followed regular budget order in 25 years, but even that process itself really only accounts for about a third of all the money the government is spending. And as you mentioned, these mandatory spending programs, as they're called, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Obamacare, they're growing on autopilot because they're never debated. And so it takes, not only procedurally takes quite a bit, but it takes quite a bit of political courage to address those issues. And I think now we're seeing those impacts, and appreciate you raising how, in particular, it's impacting, struggling families, single parents, seniors on fixed incomes. Do you feel like you've seen, people like that be hit particularly hard in Florida?
I think the groups that you should worry about the most is the poor and the people on fixed income. Generally, if you're on fixed income, the money you get a month is not staying up with inflation. Wages are generally not staying up with inflation. And if you're poor, they're not staying up with inflation. So we're putting these people in a worse position. Now, inflation doesn't hurt if you own a bunch of assets, right? If you're rich and you own a bunch of land and own a bunch of buildings, it doesn't hurt you as much. But it does hurt you if you're out there, you're a worker and your gas goes up and your food goes up and your clothing costs go up. You're just a normal person, that has a few kids and you're just trying to get ahead, make sure they can afford their college education. And that's who's getting hurt right now. But up here, I can just tell you, you as an individual American, you have got to tell your House member and your senator that they have to put more effort into getting control of the budget. I've been on the budget committee for 4 years. We don't even try to pass budgets. Last 2 years, Bernie Sanders has been the chair. We don't have meetings to talk about passing a budget. I mean, that's it. We don't even meet about it. I mean, that's our job. I'm a business guy. Do you think I could go borrow money from the bank? I mean, at one time I think I owed $10 billion. I was running a big company. You think I could go to the bank? Hey, give me $10 billion. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do with it. And by the way, I'm going to lose money every year. No, you can't do that. Investors wouldn't have invested with me. We have to have a budget and we have to live within our budget. If we don't, why, in a business, you wouldn't get reelected, you wouldn't keep your job.
Absolutely. That transparency and accountability is essential, that you mentioned. And spending isn't the only way that this administration has really been harming families. One of the other areas where where their recklessness is really costing us is energy policy. We saw really from the campaign trail with President Biden, day one when he came into office, they have declared war on our most affordable, abundant, and reliable sources of energy. Now, we see this every day driving down the road with the high gas prices. In some places, it was touching $5, even $6 a gallon over the summer. But energy goes into almost everything. And so what are some of the secondary, tertiary kind of background effects of high energy costs that the American people might not be aware of, that the businesses are dealing with, that ultimately cost us down the line?
When the Biden administration and the Democrats say have a war on fossil fuel, it's actually a war on the poor families, right? Because if you think about it, low energy prices is the opportunity in America. If we have lower energy prices in the world, then we can build our businesses. We can get people out of poverty. People in lower income can afford the gas to get ahead, things like that. So it makes no sense because, by the way, here's what you're going to do. If you have a war on fossil fuel, which the Democrats and Biden do, then you're going to cause gas prices to go up. You're going to cause diesel prices to go up. You're going to cause heating oil prices to go up. That hurts all Americans, but it hurts. I mean, the rich, if their cost of stuff goes up, it didn't change their life much. But the poor, people on fixed income, it causes them a lot. And then on top of that, it makes our companies, puts our companies at risk because we can't compete in a global economy if somebody else has lower energy prices than we do. Low energy prices is a real key to building a good economy. So as Biden wants to kill low energy prices, we're going to go down the path of Europe, which is their economy is in a shamble right now because Europe relied on Russia. Russia's held back, and now Europe is their economy is in horrible shape now because they don't have low energy prices. You can't compete. Everything is tied to energy, food production, manufacturing costs, everything. And by the way, how many people like it when they, so I guess some people probably like colder temperatures. I live in Florida. I don't like cold temperatures. But I was just meeting with an ambassador from Europe, and she was saying how their country has dramatically reduced the consumption by keeping it's cold there now, but they're not, their houses are colder, their businesses are colder, people are dressing with a lot warmer clothes now, but it's the only way they can reduce their energy consumption. Is that what we want to do in America? That's exactly what Joe Biden's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important. What you're pointing to are some potentially serious long-term consequences. Now, they're coming to bear in Europe, and you're seeing some European countries reverse some of the decisions they made previously about energy policy. And like you said, we want to avoid being in that situation. One of the things the administration has done, rather than produce our energy here in the United States, they've gone and begged other countries to increase their production. Now, being from Florida, is it particularly frustrating for your constituents to see this administration go and beg Venezuela, of all countries, to increase their production when we have so much to be had underfoot? How has that gone over in your state?
Well, think about how many people from Venezuela are furious that first Chavez and now Maduro is basically taking away all their rights. They've lost their country. That's exactly what's happened in Venezuela now. I mean, Maduro, he's killing his citizens. He's starving them. He's making sure they don't have medicine. They don't have energy. But now, here comes Biden. He comes to rescue to help Maduro try to produce oil and gas. But that will not help the citizens of Venezuela. It's going to help. Maybe it'll help, Chevron. Maybe it'll help Biden. But it's not going to help the people of Venezuela because Biden doesn't care about that. He is. And why is it that energy produced in Venezuela is okay, but energy produced in Texas is bad? I mean, this doesn't make any sense what he's doing. And he's talked to Iran about energy. And I mean, you look at this and you say, who in their right mind would be making these decisions? Who doesn't care about human rights? Who doesn't care about poor children dying? And think about this. If as Biden and other political leaders force energy prices to go up, what happens in poor countries that now their energy prices are higher? Well, guess what? Their hospitals won't be able to take care of premature babies because their energy prices are too high. They'll only have energy for a certain number of hours a day. And so you have a premature baby, they're not going to survive it. I mean, because they don't have less expensive, energy costs. I mean, low cost energy is a driver to the world economy. It's a driver to getting people out of poverty. And why Biden doesn't care about poor people, I don't get it.
And I think you raise an important point, which is that energy is energy, right? But the United States generally does this stuff cleaner and more efficiently than anywhere else in the world. And so it's not like you're doing any good for the environment by using energy from Iran or Venezuela or even the strategic production reserve rather than just developing it, in Texas or Louisiana, North Dakota, wherever the case may be. But that just doesn't seem to be something that's considering the White House.
Think of this. The reserve, the oil and gas reserves we're supposed to have, that's supposed to be for a war, not for a prison-made energy crisis. This is made by Biden. It's made by Biden. He's caused gas prices to go up, diesel prices to go up, all these prices to go up. And then he reduces our opportunity to make sure we're in a position in case we're ever at war. I don't ever want to be at war. It's not my choice. It'll be somebody that attacks us. But I mean, how are we helping our and by the way, we can't help our allies if we have high energy prices. So I mean, it's like, why would we do this ourselves? And China's not out there. They're not they're not doing things that are going to make our environment cleaner. They're adding more coal plants. I want a clean environment. We can do it, but you don't do it through high energy prices. You do it by low energy prices, and where as you have more production, you can do things cleaner. Think about what we've accomplished in the last 50 years as far as our water quality, our air quality, and it's because we've had financial success through low energy prices.
Yeah, absolutely. A really important point, right? The more prosperous we are, the better we can be for our environment. The thing is, it's not just energy where this administration has overregulated so zealously. Really every area from financial services to labor, you name it, the agencies have run amok, many times overstepping, the authority that they actually are supposed to have under the law and under the Constitution. That's another area. It's difficult to connect the average American to the impacts of Washington agencies overregulating. But with your business background, what are some of the ways that overregulation in general has added to these high costs the American people are facing?
And here's what happens in business. In business, you have the opportunity to invest anywhere you want. And so where you do is you invest where you have less risk. We have a greater chance of reward. And so what I found as governor of Florida, we added, while I was governor, 1.7 million jobs. And we cut taxes and fees 100 times. That was helpful. But actually what we really did was we streamlined the permitting processes. We still have enforced the law. But we knew you were going to get a permit, we'd let you get your permit quickly. If we knew you're not going to get a permit, we told you right away, right? Then on the regulatory environment, I got rid of 20% of regulations in the state. There's a lot of regulations that might have been a good idea years ago, but why do we need government dictating all of our lives? I mean, I really trust individuals. I trust Americans to make good choices. And so there's regulations we need, but we've got to reduce the regulatory environment. We've got to streamline the permitting environment. That will get us more. That will give us more jobs. That'll give us lower energy. But the Biden administration, they don't want to do energy production, so they prevent you from getting a permit, or they make it a pain in the butt for things. And when you do, what does a normal business person? Well, I think I'll just sit back. I'll wait until there's a better environment. I mean, why? What would you do? Would you put your money at risk? No, it's just like you probably are not out there investing in Cuba right now, or in Iran, okay, or North Korea, because that's pretty risky. Well, you have to have the same mindset that what type of risk am I willing to take? And as the Biden administration regulatory environment, just gets worse and worse and worse, business people say, I'm going to invest less and less and less. Guess what? The poor families get less and less jobs, less opportunity to get out of poverty. It just works that way. And it's like these Democrats and Biden have no concept how the world works.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, right? It's not just opportunity, right? You're stifling opportunity by creating regulations, it's driving up costs, which you addressed, hurts poorer families the most. But really what businesses need to grow is long-term certainty. And I think the uncertainty, the regulations themselves are very harmful. There's also a question of what's next with this administration. What area are they going to step into next, regulate again? Is it energy or labor or banking, what have you? So really kind of no end in sight. But as we look towards next year, Senator, obviously, we don't have the expectation that very much good free market legislation is going to get to President Biden's desk, let alone have President Biden sign it into law. But it's still important to send signals to the country about what a better direction, a change of the trajectory might look like. And so what are some of the biggest priorities that you're looking forward to fighting on and sending signals to the American people about your priorities, what the country might be able to do with better leadership? What are some of those big priorities for you next year?
Well, as you know, I ran to be the Republican leader. I think we got to be very clear about what we're going to accomplish, and we got to work our butts off to accomplish it. I'm actually optimistic that we can get things done up here. You just have to fight every day to get yours done. You have to have the best idea. So I put out a plan. It's at rescueamerica.com. And I tell everybody, it doesn't have to be my ideas, but we as Republicans, we have to say, what are we going to do to make this a better place? What are we, and so what are we going to do? So right now, we're fighting over the National Defense Authorization Act. I with a variety of other individuals, we said, we are not going to allow that to go forward unless we get rid of the vaccine mandate, because we got military men and women that are serving. They've got legitimate religious or health beliefs about the vaccine. They shouldn't be kicked out of the military. There's a guy that saved people's lives in the Coast Guard during Hurricane Ian. Even President Biden called to thank him, and then he's being discharged right now from the Coast Guard. How does that make any sense? So I think we've got to fight over things. We don't need 87,000 more IRS agents. We've got to balance our budget. We've got to be clear about what we're going to do to fix Social Security, Medicare, because I want them preserved for people. So I think we've got to say that every day we're going to get up and do exactly what we said we were going to do when we campaigned. We are going to make government work better than it has. We're going to fight when there's a new regulatory environment, some new regulation out there. And we have, look, we can do that. It takes, in the Senate, to pass legislation, it takes 60 votes to get 60 senators to get through cloture. That means to get through cloture, they need 9 Republicans. All right, we need to be a brick wall to this radical Biden Democrat agenda. I mean, right now, this month, we're going to have another spending bill. It should be called the Pelosi Schumer end-of-year spending bill. That's what it is. They call it the omnibus. No, it's a Pelosi Schumer end-of-year spending bill. They've been spending money, and it's all borrowed money. We've got to be a brick wall and say, no, we have a new Congress coming in. We'll do a continuing resolution and through sometime, whether it's the end of January, middle of February, and say, let the new Congress decide. This Congress decided not to pass budgets. They decided. Democrats control the House and the Senate here. They decided not to pass budgets. Let's give the new Congress opportunity if they want to pass a budget. We ought to be passing budgets up here. So I think we got to fight for the American public.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've long been a champion of some of these biggest fights. You mentioned, regulations, entitlement spending, the debt. I mean, these are huge, huge fights that, many members of Congress simply don't have the courage to take on. And so we appreciate your willingness to lead on those issues. But obviously, you're also accountable to the people of Florida, and you're involved in a lot of issues. What is maybe one smaller pet issue that people outside of your constituents in Florida, people outside of DC might not know about, that you're also looking forward to passionately advocating for, something smaller that folks might not be seeing headlines about?
Well, I think one thing we need to understand, and I think we need to do a study to exactly the impact these social media sites have on the mental health of our children. I'm really worried. I'm blessed. Ann and I have been married since we were 19 years old. We have 7 grandchildren, and social media is so prevalent. And so I think we have to understand the impact social media has on our children. It's a totally different world than I grew up, where there's nothing like that. We got our news. We learned the history through encyclopedias. Totally different. There was no internet back then, but now with these social media sites, how does it impact the mental health of our children? Because that's our future. I love my grandchildren. I want them to. We've got 7 of them. I want them to prosper. So I want to make sure, and I'm sure every grandparent is just like me, and every parent with children is just like me, and they have such high hopes for their children and grandchildren. I just want to understand how these social media sites are impacting their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. A very, very interesting subject. Well, Senator, it's been a long 2 years, really. And as we head into the holidays, certainly hope that you get a chance to take a break. You mentioned you have 7 grandkids. Any particularly favorite holiday traditions or memories, things you're looking forward to spending with your grandkids, or things that you enjoyed while you were growing up?
I was blessed. I had just the most wonderful mom. She struggled for money. The firemen were helpful to us at Christmas through Toys for Tots and stuff like that. So I think to me is now the opportunity I have to be able to help other families with toys and things. So everybody has a great Christmas is probably the best tradition for me. We when our kids were growing up, we used to help a couple families at Christmas, and our children and us would go find out what we're going to get them and help them, and that's probably the best Christmas tradition that we have. It's a wonderful day to celebrate the birth of Christ, and then you get excited about what are we going to get accomplished in the new year. And I'm a planner. I'm a checklist person, so I'm working on my ideas what we're going to get done for next year.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. And then obviously you've got a very inspiring story. I got last one for you. We're doing this conversation right before the Army-Navy game. Let me guess, who you're rooting for?
Well, that's pretty easy. Go Navy.
There you go.
It's going to be a great game. I hope Navy wins. My father, he was one of 3,000 people that did all the combat jumps with the 82nd Airborne in the Second World War. He told me how bad the Germans were, the food and the foxholes, so I joined the Navy. So I had a great experience. So go Navy, beat Army.
You got it. Well, Senator, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, thank you for your leadership in the Senate. We've really enjoyed working with you in your capacity as governor, and then here in the Senate. Our activists always enjoy hearing from you, again, not just in Florida, but really across the country. You've demonstrated a lot of courage in fighting for important issues that a lot of people like to ignore in Washington and the news media and whatnot. So really, thank you again for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we look forward to working with you in the new year.